With the emergence of new immunotherapy and targeted therapy drugs over the past couple of decades, there's been rapid progress against cancer. But we could be making much faster progress than we are now, and most patients with metastatic disease remain incurable. Progress against cancers is highly reliant on clinical research, so anything that delays clinical research can directly slow progress. If a new therapy prolongs life expectancy and alleviates suffering, then anything that delays the approval of that drug can lead to increased number of lives lost and increased suffering that could have been avoided. In this video, I will discuss some of the negative impacts of things that delay clinical research and approval of effective new drugs. My name is Dr. David Stewart. I'm a medical oncologist in Ottawa, Canada, and a professor of medicine at the University of Ottawa. I recently wrote a book called A Short Primer on Why Cancer Still Sucks, intended for patients, and it can be purchased online through Amazon Books. This is the 12th out of 16 videos that I'm putting together to address some of the issues that people often ask me about cancer. And for further details, you can see my book. Importantly, for your own personal health care, it's very important that you rely on your healthcare advisors. When a promising new drug is discovered, it must undergo clinical trials to assess whether it is useful clinically. So these clinical trials assess both the effectiveness and the safety of the new therapy. Can a new drug shrink a cancer and improve symptoms? Can it prolong life expectancy? Overall, does it offer any advantages over other currently available therapies? What kind of side effects does it produce, and how bad are they? Are there specific groups of patients that should not receive the drug because of safety concerns, because it would be too toxic in them? Overall, do the potential benefits outweigh the potential risks of the new drug? In the 1960s, it took an average of 8 years to bring a drug from discovery to approval. And once approved, then it could be used by oncologists to treat patients with advanced cancers. By the early 2000s, this time from drug discovery to drug approval had increased to about 12 to 15 years from the 8 years in the 1960s. And a lot of this increase in the amount of time required for drug approval was driven by increasing regulatory complexity and stringency. The increase in regulatory complexity and stringency was intended to protect patient safety, patient rights, data integrity, and also to make sure that regulators in one country could rely on data generated in another country when deciding whether or not to approve a new drug. Tight regulation in new drug development is very, very important. There have been examples in the past where patients have been harmed by experimentation on them without their knowledge or consent. There have also been examples in the past where patients have been harmed by side effects or toxicities that were not disclosed to them. There have also been examples in the past where clinical research data has been falsified or misinterpreted so that drugs were approved that were not as effective or safe as claimed based on the flawed data that was used. In some cases, inadequate or insufficient information was collected during clinical research to give a full picture of the drug. Or in other cases, patient privacy was breached with either harm or inconvenience to them because of the breach of their privacy. So clinical research has become increasingly tight in a very legitimate effort to try to reduce these negative consequences of the past. However, insufficient attention has been paid to the negative consequences of the regulation itself, and there has been no attempt or no major attempt to revise regulatory approaches to maintain the benefit that they have, but with reduced negative consequences of the regulations themselves. The first negative consequence of the currently complex stringent regulation is that it takes too long to approve new drugs that are effective. So to assess this, we reviewed 27 papers published between the year 2000 and 2015 that described drugs that led to an improvement in life expectancy of patients with advanced cancers. Now, the average increase in life expectancy across these studies was only about 4 months per patient for each of these studies. An increase in life expectancy of 4 months per patient may not sound very much to you if you're healthy, but if you're looking down the gun barrel with a very short life expectancy, then suddenly that 4 months can become very important and meaningful. In addition, that 4 months was an average. For some drugs and some studies, the average was longer than that. And also for individual patients, some individual patients might not gain anything, but some others might live a number of years longer because of the effects of the new drug on them. So for many patients, the important thing is not what the average is, but the fact that there's at least a possibility of the drug prolonging their life by many months or years, and just the ability to have access to a drug that might possibly do it, recognizing that it might be of no benefit, but it could be a marked benefit in them as an individual. So clinical trials use a metric called a life year. So one life year is one person being alive for 1 year. So in the studies that we looked at, the average life expectancy increase of 4 months means that 1/3 of a life year would be gained for every patient that was receiving the treatment. Or if we treated 1,000 patients, then a total of 333 life years would be saved by treating those 1,000 patients. So for each of the drugs, we then multiplied the gain in life expectancy for that drug by the number of patients dying worldwide of that cancer in a year. And so what that calculation told us is that for each drug, there was an average of 80,000 life years lost worldwide per year of delay in drug approval, or 1 life year lost for every 7 minutes of delay in approving each of the individual drugs. For these 27 drugs, it took an average of 12 years from drug discovery to approval. And so when we did the calculation of the number of life years lost from the time of discovery until drug approval, it was close to 1 million life years lost between drug discovery and drug approval. So, and that 1 million life years lost was for each drug. In addition, these drugs can alleviate suffering, so that for every year of delay in approval, additional patients were suffering from cancer symptoms that could have been alleviated by these effective new drugs. So overall, there would be a very substantial benefit to being able to make these drugs available faster. The other important consideration is that increasingly complex stringent regulation increases the cost of new drug development. In 1962, it cost an average of $4 million to bring a drug from discovery to approval. By 1987, this had increased to $231 million. And by 2013, it had increased to $2.9 billion. So a huge increase in the cost of bringing a drug from discovery to availability widely and approval. So these costs have been rising much faster than inflation. These rapidly rising drug development costs have major negative consequences. The first is that the drug development cost has to be recouped after the drug is marketed. If not, then no company would ever invest in new drug development. And so the high cost of new drug development is one major driving factor in the very high prices that we have to pay for drugs currently. A second major negative consequence is if it costs a lot to bring one drug to market, to approval, then with the resources available, far fewer drugs can be tested. So the very high cost of new drug development directly slows progress. A third issue is that when it costs a lot, then only large companies with deep pockets can afford to compete. So this means that small companies cannot compete. This reduces competition and again slows progress. Again, as noted, tight clinical research regulation is extremely important. It protects patient safety, patient rights, and data integrity. But we need to do a much better job of making it more cost-effective, cost-efficient. So different countries will assign a different value to different drugs. So some will say that a drug would be worth about $50,000 per year of life saved. Some countries would say it's $200,000 per year of life saved. But when we did the calculation of the cost per life year saved by the increasingly complex regulation, we found that it was $2.7 million per life year saved. So it costs far more to save a life through increasingly complex clinical research regulation than what countries would be willing to pay to give that drug to a patient to try to prolong their life expectancy. It is good that clinical research regulation can save lives by making things safer, but we need to make this much cheaper to do this. So we're making rapid progress, but we could be making progress far more rapidly than we are now at a far lower cost. And there are many different ways to do this. But we need to tackle them. On this and other things relevant to cancer, again, I'll refer you to my book, A Short Primer on Why Cancer Still Sucks, available for purchase online through Amazon Books. Thank you.